Listen Lanarkshire is a community radio station governed by the registered charity Getting Better Together Limited. Therefore, the radio station itself retains political neutrality, and any political views or comments aired as part of political discussion programming or otherwise are not the views of Listen Lanarkshire, nor of Getting Better Together Limited. The station has a set of key commitments found on the Ofcom website, and we adhere to all necessary Ofcom rules. For more information or inquiries, please contact us at radio@shotshealthyliving.com.
So tonight we're back with another packed episode of What's the Point? And if you've tuned in hoping for light-hearted chat about community newsletters or coffee mornings, well, unlucky, buckle in. Before we dive in, I'm your host Greg Lennon. Still no ban for the council chamber, and still no standards complaint this week, but there's still time, Jerry. We're totting up. Honestly, we're edging closer every episode, so you just keep supporting this channel, and hopefully we'll get there one day with a big standards complaint that finally takes me off the air. And as always, I'm joined by the man who puts the why into why is he dressed like that, a former new romantic, a part-time bowler, and the only man who thinks crushed velvet is business casual. It's my old pal Jerry Brennan. How are we?
Thank you, Greg. Doing very well, and as always, it's an extraordinary pleasure to be here.
Now, listen, Jerry, tonight we're talking left and right and all the messy middle, but more importantly, Jerry, are you still trying to get a PFI jacket so you can pay it up over 10 years? Is that what you're looking for?
I've ordered it out the catalogue, Greg. I'm hoping to pay it up over 38 weeks. Well, it's due in the Blue Arrow van in 2 weeks.
There you go, the Provi woman knows when to chat the door. But anyway, we're joined by someone who knows the gritty side of Scottish politics, Mr. Neil Findlay, former MSP and Labour leadership challenger for bricklayer to Holyrood. Neil's not your average backroom strategist. He's someone who actually understands working class life, because surprise, he's lived it, Jerry. He's lived it. He's challenged Jim Murphy for the Labour leadership back in 2014 with no spin or slogans but the real policies, and since then he's held power to account at every level, and most recently he's walked away from Labour altogether over cuts to social security. So tonight we're going to be asking Neil, has Labour lost its soul or just its strategy? How should the left respond to the rise of right? And is there still room for real change in Scottish politics, or are we just watching the same old rebrands of the new logos? Neil, how are you?
I'm very well, guys. Delighted to be here. I'm crossing border country into Shots, coming out for Falthouse, but I got my passport stamped and my Jags on the way, so I'm fine.
Excellent. Welcome to the new state and new republic in North Lanarkshire.
Well, it's nearly as bad as Blackridge. You come into Blackridge from the east side and there's a sign that says it's a handgun free town.
That means they hand out free handguns.
Right, we digress anyway. And of course, when it be a What's the Point with it, a bit of inspiration. So we're also joined tonight by a very, very good friend, Jerry, Councillor Barry McCluskey, Scotland's #1 blind golfer, and a man who proves that disability is no barrier to determination, leadership, or handling most of us on our backsides in a golf course.
Two amazing guests.
Yes.
Two amazing
Very
guests.
much. So to everybody listening, we want your take. We want to see, what do you want to see for your politicians? Have you had enough of the spin machines, or is there still something out there that's worth fighting for? And you can text and even call in later on when we open up the phone lines in 07379399228. The lines will be opened after 8 o'clock, and we're live and we're listening. And yes, still no sign of that El Presidente.
Still hiding.
Jerry, he's still hiding.
I hope he's alright.
So have you seen that illustrious leader of yours somewhere in the local vicinity near a photo op or a camouflage behind a suspiciously worded press release? You know what to do. The missing leader hotline is open, 07503 044 846. Now let's get into it, Jerry.
Yes, Greg. Now, Neil, I get the first two questions because pretty much after that he starts to dominate. I'm going to have the first two, and the first two are normally the best two. So, Neil, you've been a councillor, you've been an MSP, a teacher, an activist. What first drew you into politics?
My ma was a primary teacher and my dad was a bricklayer. My dad was a nationalist. My ma would have been a Labour voter, come for a traditional Catholic Lithuanian family, not an Irish family, Lithuanian family. None of my parents were involved in politics, political parties. My ma was an EIS rep at the school, and she led a successful strike at that school over composite classes, believe it or not. That was
seldom falls far from the tree.
So none of them were involved in politics, but when I was 13, 14, the miners' strike was in full flow, and I watched every bit of it on the telly. I became quite fascinated by it. I loved listening to Scargill and McGahey and Heathfield. I saw these as being articulate working class men who were very persuasive to me. And then I started to watch the likes of Tony Benn, and who for me is the greatest political communicator ever, certainly in my lifetime, and listen to them and their arguments for a society based on fairness and justice and decency and dignity for all. And for me, that I don't know if part of that was part of that was the fundamental decency that your parents and your grandparents instill in you. The fundamental decency of the community I live in, which is a fantastic community. It has its problems, it has its issues, but the people are absolutely solid, and the solidarity you get of people when the chips are down is something else. So that got me interested in watching politics on TV. And at that time, the natural progression was I actually went to an anti-poll tax meeting in the miners' welfare.
Right.
Massive meeting. Tommy Sheridan addressed it, I think. Dennis Canavan it was. And coming out the same night, there was a meeting on in the wee lounge in the welfare, and it was the local Labour Party branch. And my pal's ma, who was the chair, grabbed me and said, "You need to get in and join this." And I did, and that's where it started.
So you spoke there about working class, and about the importance of working class in communities and politicians who reflect the views of those communities. Looking back, how do you feel your working class background shaped your approach to your time in Holyrood?
It shaped everything. It was bizarre how I got into Holyrood.
We're here for an hour, Neil.
I was a councillor, and I was thoroughly enjoying being on the council then, when there was a bit of money about. When there was councils had mayor powers, was a joy. Was a joy.
The powers bits is a bone of contention for us.
You could do stuff. You could do stuff. The council was not run by officials. It was, the policy direction was set by,
I like the cut of this man's jib,
by councillors, and very strong, intelligent, robust councillors were on there at the time, certainly in my time. I wasn't going to stand for for the Parliament. My pal said, just put your name in, see what the crack is. So I stood in the constituency.
How long were you a councillor for?
I was 9 years.
So 2 and a bit terms, or
aye, two and a bit terms. Actually, it was 3. Was it 3? No, two and a bit terms. 2 and a bit terms. Aye. So I wasn't going to stand. My pal, a couple of my mates who were in the union said, "Get your name in." So there was 3 people stood in the constituency selection. I knew I would be third. There was no question there was going to be third. But I got a good third, and I thought, well, that's fine. When it came to the regional list sort of caper, I wasn't going to even bother putting my name forward. And my wife, who's no political at all, really no particular political at all, just says, "Stick your name in." And I thought, that's it. Sent my name away. And my campaign consisted of 1 email to members. I did nothing else.
That was it.
And I ended up third on the list. I have no idea. In fact, I don't know why, because I drew with Anne Henderson, who's a good comrade, and she's been RMT. She works with RMT now. Anne and I drew in the final ballot, but I got something like 1 mayor first preference. And then I got elected because the shiter Labour's result in that election, the mere chance I had a list position.
Right.
And the week before the election, we canvassed in the strongest Labour area, the strongest Labour seat, which was in Faltus, where I live. and the canvas was terrible compared to what went on in the past. And I phoned my two mates and I says, come round to the house, because I think I could be getting elected. And they were like, what are you talking about? I says, I'm telling you, I think there's a good chance of this. And on the night of the election, as every constituency seat fell, we looked at each other and went, this is on. And it wasn't until at one point Malcolm Chisholm won his seat in Leith, and we went, oh no, he's won. But at that point we knew that it was almost inevitable that I was going to get in.
See, at that point, Neil, right, so you're a working class...
And I didn't hear a suit.
You didn't hear a suit. You're a working class man, right? As we say, you've been a teacher, an activist, a councillor. Did you at any point have the kind of imposter syndrome when you went in? And how did you get over that?
I had a skip for imposter syndrome. Honestly, I was bricking it that I was going in there thinking, what am I doing going in here? This is not for me. I'm going to be out my depth. All these clever, intelligent people there who can all stand up and pontificate about stuff are going to be there, and I'm going to be a gibbering idiot here. And I have to say that lasted probably about 6 or 8 weeks.
Right.
Because by that time I'd heard most of them speak, and I thought, what am I worrying about here? And my confidence started to grow. And the more experience you got, the more meetings you did, the more public meetings, the more people in the saw you, contacted you. And actually, I loved the constituency work. That's what you're in politics for. To help folk who are coming to you because they've tried everything else and they can't get any help, right? That's where you get. And my office team, anybody I employed, was told the biggest priority in this office is the people who come through the door. We want results for them. We do things diligently. We don't let anybody hang. We don't let them, know what's happening. If we need to write to them 10 times to tell them what's going on, we'll do that. And that worked really well. And my team, I had a very loyal team. I didn't go turn some MSPs go through dozens of staff because for various reasons. I had a very loyal team. We stuck together. I treated them well. They did the business for me. And that, again, people had a confidence that I go and see him because they'll get back to you. Even if they're to tell you something you didn't want to hear,
even if it's bad
they'll
news,
get back to you. And all of that raised your head and raised my confidence that actually I had every right to be there as much as MD was. And it was a real confidence boost.
One final question before you jump. Was there anyone from your constituency office who went on to do anything politically in elected life? Yes. So Frank Toner, who worked for me, went on to be a councillor in West Lothian. Tommy Kane, who worked with me then and still works with me now, he went on, not elected, but he went on to be the Jeremy Corbyn's advisor in Scotland. Michael Sharp, who worked with me for a period, went on to be the General Secretary of the Labour Party in Scotland, works for me now. And Caitlin Kane, who worked for me for a period, was a parliamentary candidate at the general election. Right. So all of them, to some extent or another, remained in politics. So you've carried that wee core group almost through your political life.
I would turn on its head. I think they carried me at times. I honestly do. I mean, you can't do it without really, really good people.
Trust. Trust 100%. Like Greg and I. Our small group
all the time. I carry him. I know the pain.
We have a small group of 7, but that trust, honesty, integrity is absolutely essential for it to work.
I mean, I would say to them, I'm not giving you any hours, and I'm telling you, you come and go when you need to come and go, but we need to do the business. And nobody took the piss.
Well, this leads nicely on to where we're kind of heading. It's a chat, so the format of this is normally we just sit and blare. That's basically it. We'll try and fire in a couple of questions that we kind of come up with, but majority of the time it's just generic questions that end up becoming very sort of loosely based. So we're talking just now about trust and integrity within politics, and my focus over the last couple of years in particular is, and I can be criticised for this because I'm quite critical of the Labour Party, Do you think that the Labour Party has managed to rebuild that trust and integrity with the electorate? Because if you're looking at polls the new and you're looking at Anna Sarwar coming out there, it seems to be that messaging's changing continuously and he's the next First Minister. Do you think the Labour Party has reconnected, or do you think there's still some way to go?
I don't think any of them have got any trust, or they like to view them with integrity. If you look at the last general election, Starmer won by a landslide. That was a wide victory, but a shallow victory.
165. I mean, it's not
extremely shallow victory. He got far fewer votes than Corbyn did in 2017. I think he got fewer votes than Corbyn did in 2019 when Labour got hammered. People were hacked off with the Tories. They were desperate to get rid of the Sunak. The easiest way to get rid of them was to vote Labour, and that's what they did. The idea that there's a great love for Labour is utter nonsense. I think Starmer is a compulsive liar. He has an inability to tell the truth, and
it's an opportunist.
I find him despicable. I really do find him despicable. I dealt with Starmer quite a lot when he was the Brexit spokesperson for Corbyn, and I was a Brexit spokesperson when Richard Maynard was up here as well. So I had to deal with him. We did public meetings. I had to go and brief him if he was coming to meetings in Scotland and all the rest of it. I got on fine with him then. I knew he wasn't my politics. I knew he was playing a game in Corbyn's shadow cabinet, waiting for his time. It was obvious. It was obvious to anybody. But he knew his brief. He could speak to like the Scottish Whisky Society or business community, no problem.
Very articulate.
And he knew stuff. But when he stood for Labour leader, he stood on a parcel of lies that he immediately shredded, and I wouldn't trust him as far as I could throw him.
Would you say your assessment then of Scottish Labour as it stands right now? What's Anna Sarwar's sort of stewardship? Would they think that's going to take
it's been interesting because their initial strategy was we will do no very much, we'll announce no very much, Starmer will win and we'll ride in the coattails. And that immediately went Pete Tong,
Winter Fuel,
Waspy, Winter Fuel, all the betrayals, Gaza, you name it, all the betrayals that they've done, that went Pete Tong. And then but then obviously they've had a bit of at the time where they thought they were going to ride in the coattails, Sarwar was measuring for the curtains at Bute House. His measuring tape was rapidly put away. I think the by-election victory in Hamilton, I think will delude them into thinking that they're going to waltz into Bute House again. I think that's far, far, far from the truth. And it's a depressing situation in Scotland because for the SNP, the one thing that is consistent about the SNP is they are dreadful at governing. They are absolutely dreadful. If you look at every public service, the NHS, housing, education, social care, councils in particular, everything's worse than when they came to power. Everything's worse. You only need to look at the state of the public realm, the state of the roads, youth work. Every area that you guys as councillors are involved in is getting worse.
Do you think that they fell into the trap in the government? Do you think that's what it is with the SNP, and it's a lack of ideas, or do you think it comes down to the actual funding coming from Westminster?
But they're very well. There's a number of fronts now. I mean, obviously, if you look at the raw figures, they've had more money for Westminster than they've had before. So there's more cash there. But they're really just bad. I mean, if you look at things that money's been squandered on, look at the ferries. One of the biggest scandals at the moment that nobody is focused on. It's going to cost £1 billion, £1,000 million to build one jail, one prison. Is £1 billion. I think the Scottish budget's only 66 billion. It's mental. Where's the scrutiny of that? If you look at the money that's squandered on the National Care Service, that's what's that achieved? It's another level of bureaucracy. If you look at the money that's been absolutely, oh God, it breaks my heart, in the NHS, the greatest public service that we've got, the delayed discharge It costs $4,000 a week to keep somebody in the hospital.
Right.
$4,000 a week, and yet we're losing. It will be millions of days. It probably now be millions of days have been wasted over their time in delayed discharge and
What
hospital.
do you think then? What do you think if Labour was to get in? Do you think there's a position that Labour could take that could potentially look at trying to better those odds in relation to fixing the services and the frontline services? Do you think they'll do?
There's no doubt the
services
services can be improved. There's no doubt about that. There's absolutely no doubt. But there has to be the political will to do it.
Yeah.
You know, you'll never improve the NHS without fundamentally dealing with social care. And you cannot deal with social care until you deal with pay and conditions in the sector, to have a stable workforce in a sector that people want to work in, and that people who work in it are treated with dignity and respect. During the COVID pandemic and before it, I moved amendments in Parliament to bring in national bargaining for trade unions in the care sector. Now, that would have ensured that there was decent wages, decent conditions, people would have had employment rights and all the rest of it. And Mike Russell, you know, in his inimitable style, you know, bellowed at me that it was performative, Mr. Findlay, being performative. It's impossible to introduce collective bargaining in there. We're going to introduce it anyway.
That's the point I was going to make.
We're 5 years down the road for that, and it's still not in place. And we can put men on the moon, but we can't organise bargaining in that sector. It's mental.
Here's the thing about the National Care Service, because like you, we and many others, we probably all stood out and rattled pots and pans and clapped for all the great work that was being done in the NHS and all the carers going around, and they were struggling to get PPP. I worked in that sector myself, Neil, and I know how big a challenge it was, especially in the early days, just making sure that people were equipped to go and deliver those essential services. But the issue with the National Care Service is that it appears to have been scuppered by many different groups, right? So on the one hand, you've got that union aspect of collective bargaining. I don't know if that couldn't have been negotiated as you went through the process of setting it up, but I certainly heard individuals at council levels saying we will not support this National Care Service because, and this was local political force coming through, particularly from Labour councils, and I'm going to include North Lanarkshire in that, because some of the voices that were coming through were saying, well, if you take social care out of local authority and you take children's services, because that was added on at the end, what role for us? What role for all these 32 chief executives? Well, potentially there's a democratic mandate granted to, whether you agree with this or not, the mandate's been granted through the election, because the National Care Service was in the SNP's mandate.
But people in local communities have got the right to say when the centre sucks up power from the local, and that's where I think there's a major problem. See, I think that we need to look at when we're looking at any issue in the Constitution, there needs to be the Constitution in its entirety. So what are the powers of central government? What's the powers of local government and the powers of the Scottish Parliament? Because it is an absolute affront, things like the council tax imposed on local government. It's an affront that central government dictates what local government should do. The powers of each should be set out in statute, and local government should say when central government comes to impose stick its oar in on your bike.
What's the barrier to that then? Because Labour and the Lib Dems were in from 1999 till 2007. So if you look at some of the big things that we spoke about, council housing, right? We still had the right to buy under that. They didn't do a great deal about that. Their record in terms of housing completions was appalling, and the opportunities to move forward to these things like National Care Services never happened. The council tax never happened. And the discussions around having a local income tax were scuppered because there was no way that the SNP were going to get it through, because Labour, the Tories and the Lib Dems told them will vote against it and you don't have a majority, so you're done.
Absolutely. I mean,
What would you have done?
what would I have done?
Yeah.
Well, on each issue, I would have taken them by issue and
Right.
said, I'll support that, I'll not support that. I mean, I in the early days when you're just in the door in that parliament, right, you're naive to the ways of working and you need to learn the rule book and all the rest of it. I always remember Dennis Skinner, lecturing to new politicians and saying the first thing you do is learn the rules and learn how to use the rules to your advantage. And that's absolutely right. But when you're in early, you're not very sure about this and that, and you kind of follow the lead of the others and all the rest of it. But once you've been there a wee while, you start to say, well, I don't agree with this bollocks, and your confidence is gained and you're willing to challenge your own party as much as anybody else. And that's when I enjoyed it most. I hated being on the front bench and being put in a position where, you were okay if I was a shadow health secretary for a while and you could lead policy and you could come forward with stuff and that was fine. But when it was somebody else doing it and they were introducing policy you didn't like, then I would absolutely argue my corner really hard, and if it came to crunch I'd vote against it, as simple as that. Or I would depending on what I'd move amendments to it and all that kind of stuff. That's what you're there for. That's what you're. And what really gets to me is one of the failings of the Scottish Parliament, the biggest failings. The power of the whips in the Scottish Parliament is far more powerful than at Westminster. At Westminster, you'll always have within the political parties, you'll always have the Corbyns and the Benns and the Gales and people like that, and in the Tories you'll have the Biffins and Powells and all these people, independent-minded people. In the Scottish Parliament, that is far fewer. The discipline of the parties is even greater in Scottish Parliament than it is in
It feels that way.
Well, that's you were heavily involved in relation to Corbyn's campaign up here in Scotland, and Richard Leonard and others that have came in past. Do you think the socialist movement within Labour is retreating or receding?
Oh, jeez.
Or do you think there's an opportunity to come that could potentially come back in?
They've been beaten down, expelled, vilified, abused, lied about. I mean, you name it, it's happened to the left in the Labour Party, and some of that I've said even for other people outside the Labour Party, because it's been vociferous. I mean, the lies that were told about Corbyn about anti-Semitism was just off the scale.
Ridiculous.
But the BBC, no, just the BBC, the media had a huge role to play in the vilification of, when things like, he was getting pictures on Newsnight, his hat, or his bike, and you think, I remember.
It was very personal.
A picture on the train, and he was sitting on the floor of a train. And you're sitting and you're going, well, do you know what? If that anything at all, that tells you the guy's a normal guy. He's prepared to sit on the floor.
Let somebody else have a seat.
I mean, everybody for years knew the colour of his front door and what kind of trees he had in his garden. How often did you see the media camped outside Slammer's house? I
Never.
No. So the left's been attacked and vilified completely, outrageously. But I was at Durham at the weekend at the Miners' Gala, and there was probably 75,000 people there, and the left was there in full force. Now, I think there's talk of a new party and stuff like that. I'm not involved in it, and I don't want to be involved in it at this stage. I've got other things in my life, and I'm quite happy with my work-life balance and all the rest, and my mental health and all that kind of stuff, mental and physical health. But good luck to them. I think it's needed. It will be a difficult. It'll be a difficult job. There's nothing. As Jim Monaghan's got a great poem about the different factions in the left, and the final line is great. Is there's nothing more divisive than a call for left-wing unity. And I think it's a great line, because put the left in a room and in 5 minutes they'll be again about deed Russians and things like that. So good luck to them. It's badly needed.
The fact that they've managed to consolidate the left is something that's striking for me, given the challenge. Well, that's what I was going to say for now, but
I don't think they have. I think they're trying to do that. At the moment, Jeremy's obviously there. There's 4 independent minded, 5 independent MPs who look as though they would be on board. There is Zara Sultana, and there's potentially a number of people, quite a big swathe of the independent and sort of left councillors who Labour's either expelled or who have walked away. But outside that, I think if they launched it and they got their act together fairly quickly, they would attract a very significant number of people that would send a tremor through, an earthquake through Labour.
See those ones who left early on, when you had the boy down in Wales who left, you had the 40 councillors in, was it Bradford in Yorkshire, there was quite a large number of them left. I would imagine that they would automatically just levitate to that kind of call.
I think it was likely. I don't think they all would, but I think it'd be likely.
But a lot of them will see it as a lifeline, Greg, because like for the next elections coming round, because right, okay, they've made their stand, they've walked away on principle.
It's a political home as well, but because
well, it is, and there's safety in numbers.
The critical thing for the success of it, I think, is if they get trade union backing. No, and I'm not just talking about financially. I'm talking about organisationally, to help with the bureaucracy that you need, to help with a bit of balance sometimes, where you might have a dominant strand or faction that might want to take it in a direction that and the unions can play quite a very powerful role in sort of pulling that back and saying, listen, just calm down here, this is
or you're not getting any money.
Well, the money thing, see, the money thing's interesting. It's very misunderstood, the financial situation. As soon as you mention trade unions, people think that every union sends money to the Labour Party. They didn't, right?
No. But when you look at the figures, I mean, we've gone on to look at the figures that go in on a weekly, monthly basis into the Labour group and different strands of it, the cooperative society, the Fabian society, whatever it is, it's colossal.
Right, so you've only got 7 unions. I think it's 7 unions, I think, are still affiliated to Labour. You've got far more that aren't. And many of them have a political fund. Their political fund is not to pay the Labour Party money. Their political fund is to politically campaign. That could be with anybody. That could be with anybody. If you and so it is much misunderstood. The big unions like Unite, Unison and the GMB are politically aligned still to Labour, and the CWU, that's where the bulk of the money will come from. But Unite, its policy conference last week, just said we will be reviewing our relationship with the Labour Party. Now Labour will be well, in some ways they'll not want that to happen. In other ways, I think this is all part of the project, that they want to be rid of what they see as, they like to take the money, but they don't want to give them any clout, so they want rid of the mad uncle in the loft or whatever they see them as, and they want the business community to fund Labour. That's what Starmer wants. Now you go and look at go and have a look, if you want, for one of your shows, have a look at the register of interests of some of these MPs who've been elected, and you will see the influence, and you'll see it in the SNP as well, of private sector cash bankrolling them from private healthcare companies, insurance companies, oil companies. I mean, it is despicable. Absolutely despicable.
We spend quite a bit of time on that kind of nonsense because we've no friends. Like that. We're kind of
Friends of Israel was the one that struck me.
Just one before we go on to another topic, because he'll jump. No, I'm not. But we've got a super guest. I want to ask him as many questions as I can. You spoke earlier on, Neil, about the reduction in power at local authorities, and you were talking about the lack of power that elected members have. Are we talking about the same thing when we talk about power being delegated from elected members to the officer class through the process that we call the scheme of delegation? Is that fair to say that powers that once elected members would pore over and discuss and debate,
perform their critical scrutiny role, which is clearly
critical scrutiny role, but when that's removed and that goes to officers, then what's the point of having elected councillors?
That's your fundamental role, is to scrutinise and ensure, but it's also to lead the policy the policy decisions that the councils make. It's not for the chief executive and his senior officers to come in and say, right folks, this is what we're doing. It's for the politicians to say, no, this is what you're doing on your behalf.
I have a question for you then. Do you think it's ever right that on an annual basis only officers are allowed to make changes to the scheme of delegation and elected members are not?
That sounds outrageous. They're elected.
I agree.
They're elected.
I agree.
Councillors,
No,
it's democratically elected.
That's the point. We never stood against an officer in a husband.
I think back to when I wasn't on the council at the time. It was just the term before that, but I was involved quite a bit, and there was guys there like it was Graham Morris who went on to be an MP, Bristol Muldoon who went on to be an MSP, Ross Martin, Tony Kinder. These were people who had been regional councillors before. These were guys with big brains, really smart people, came from different places politically. Tony was very much on the left, Bristol and Ross very much on the right. The debates in that Labour group were absolutely fierce. They were based on intellect and persuasive argument and all the rest of it, and they would go on for weeks at times to get to the decision, and then the chief executive would be brought in and says, this is what we've decided and you're implementing it. It wasn't for him to come in and tell us. Indeed, if he had, he would have got his arse kicked out the door.
Do you know, we've tested a few things in council.
We like that. We like that idea. We like to test the boundaries of things.
So we've tested that, but that example that I gave you is factual in North Lanarkshire, and I didn't fully. I was only elected alongside Barry. Barry and I were elected in 22, so greenhorns, if you like. But now that we're away from a formal party structure, which I thank God in heaven for that, my political education has gone exponential, because then you do spend your time going through every element of your responsibilities, and you're going, well, wait a minute, that's
nips away as well. You've not got that idea of a business manager trying to direct, etc. as well.
That doesn't make much sense, and you see the power slowly but surely ebbing away to the point where you're going, I don't really know why I'm here, because major decisions can be made, and I know hee-haw about it. Nobody's really accountable for it. The administration are no longer accountable for it, because guess what? I never made that decision. It was the officers that made that decision. And these are the things that cause frustration. So we've tested at council a few times bringing forward Labour, not policy, but some of the stuff with the Labour manifesto be brought forward. So big what's the Chancellor's
Rachel Reeves.
Big Rachel, right? Big Rachel had this idea that she was going to cut the spend on external consultants. She was going to cut it by 50% over the parliamentary term.
We introduced that.
So I introduced a motion at North Lanarkshire Council to say, if it's good
now,
for...
not all consultants are bad, by the way.
No, there's a role. There is a role. I'll tell you what it was, right? I'll tell you, and a time
your leg when I say that.
And a time where the budgets are tight across the country, over 5 years, North Lanarkshire Council had spent nearly £17 million
crazy
on
amounts.
external consultants, right? So I said, look, if it's good enough for Big Rachel, it's good enough for us. Can we vote as a council to spend a wee bit of time reflecting on how we go about spending money on external consultants, on external legal advice,
the public purse.
And I put it to the group, and who voted it down?
Labour.
The Labour group.
Well, actually, I that kind of game's quite good. I quite enjoyed playing that game as well, because we would have a situation in the Parliament where, say, there was legislation going through, and an SNP member might propose amendments to that legislation. Clearly that the SNP didn't want. So they would then go, and as the bill would go through and you'd be voting on all the legislation, the SNP member would get up and say, Presiding Officer, I have had excellent discussions with the Finance Secretary on this issue, and I just want to say I'll not be moving my amendment. And then you would stand up and go, well, I'll move it then. And it meant they would have to vote against it. And it happened quite like that. And it was, when that happened, it was great, because the person would sit down with a red face going,
but that
got to vote against my own amendment.
That's part of it's part of that whole
mischief it all.
Well, it is.
But the bit for us is as well, I'll give another example of that. The strangest thing that we ever seen was that last year, and it was the anniversary of the miners' strikes.
Aye.
And we were the group that had to propose a remembrance for the miners' strike. No, the Labour group in North Lanarkshire. And you're sitting there going, my God, people would be turning in their graves right now, just at the prospect of that. You'll be glad to hear that's kind of us done in that kind of section of things. Now let's try and delve into the idea of independence. So 2014, you opposed independence. In hindsight, did Scotland miss its chance with that, considering where we are now, Brexit, want a fuel cost cuts, etc, etc, etc?
See, it was interesting in the run up to that, because I was not a knee-jerk opponent of independence. I looked at the time, and the prospectus that was being put forward, I didn't agree with. Simon wanted it to be, the lowest corporation tax in Europe and all that, business friendly and all that kind of stuff, and I was like, no, this isn't for me. But my view is, and it's still the same in relation to where I think the discussion of this should go. If there's going to be a future referendum, and if the Scottish people want one, they should get one. I'm a Democrat first, absolutely, they should get one. But there should be another option on the ballot paper, and that should be enhanced powers for the Scottish Parliament. So that's what
coming on to ask you that next question.
That's what I argued for in 2014. In the run up to that referendum, there's a group of us, as soon as the 2011 election was finished, I was elected, a group of us for the left and the Labour Party, the trade unions, Communist Party, came together to say there's going to be a referendum. That's inevitable. What should our position be? And we had long discussions, very good, thoughtful contributions, and we said, look, we want to ensure that you have class unity across the UK, that the trade unions are not divided. We want to ensure that we're still involved in the best of UK, best of the UK institutions like the NHS and all that kind of stuff. But we believe that the Scottish Parliament should have far more powers than it's got at the moment. Therefore, we're going to argue for a different option, and that is going to be enhanced powers. So we called ourselves the Red Paper Collective. We published books, pamphlets with a website and all this kind of stuff. We tried our best to convince the Labour Party that should be the position. Had that been the position, I think it would have won with a significant margin. Right? Instead, they got the kamikaze gear on and they signed up with the Tories. It was, excuse my language, fucking madness. Utter madness. And a number of us and some of the unions tried to say, what on earth are you doing here? And they soldiered on with it, and it was a car crash of epic proportions waiting to happen. During that period in the referendum, I probably spoke it. I would think I probably spoke it. Probably Jim Murphy running around on his iron brew.
He did. His crate.
Him on his crate, and probably, I don't know who else, but I spoke at 65 public meetings in that run up to that referendum. I'll tell you, it was the best. I wouldn't have missed it for the world. The learning experience, it toughens you up, it got you to duck and dive, it got you, people answering the questions about all sorts of stuff, some of which you didn't know the answer to, but you had to be honest with people. I loved it. I loved every minute of it, and I don't regret it. I debated with everybody, Sturgeon, Cllr, I like Neil, all the SNP folk and all the rest of it, and I voted no, and it was for those reasons. I could see the disaster that was going to happen for the Labour Party. It was inevitable that was going to happen. So I'm still off that, because so this is the logic to why I took that position. I think in you have a natural position at levels of government where your powers should lie. So there should be, as I said earlier, there's a whole suite of powers that should land at a local level. My analogy that I used to say to folk was, if you think of the postman going in to sort his mail in the morning, he's got the wee ducats where he puts his mail. If we think of the top layer, let's say that's the UN level or the EU level, whatever you want, right? That's where things like international terrorism, cross-border crime and Interpol and all that, the powers there should lie there. Then you come down a level, might be the EU level, where you've got, you know, things like environmental standards, food standards, things like that possibly. Then you come down another level, you've got an integrated national health service that you can integrate in some things, devolved in other. You're a small island nation. Why would we create a new border in a small island nation? Why would you create a new border agency? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. And then you would come down to the Scottish level, where you have a whole suite of powers that you've got at the moment, and we should have more. And I could list them more, it'll take too long. But they shouldn't stop there. They should be devolving power further down, and then you should be devolving power down to communities, local government, then communities. So I think if you were starting a country from the beginning and you had a whole list of powers that have to sit at different levels, there's a fairly natural place where they sit. At the end, I think you would have a relatively small pile that you would have a debate about. Wouldn't it be that big? Because the logic tells you where it should go. But you would have a small pile of powers where you say, I could hear a fight with you about that. The rest of it, I think, is quite logical.
Do you think there's still a future for Scotland then in the concept? Because ultimately the SNP's obviously tried whatever avenues it thought it was going to try in regards to another NDRF, and each one of these things have been calamitous and failing. Is Devo Max still the answer in your opinion?
I think I would like for us to try that, and then see the successes and failures, and if that naturally took the Scottish people to independence, then so be it. So be it. I'm a Democrat. It might take me to that position. What's going on now is an absolute disaster. It's an absolute disaster. Now, that's if you had a different government.
Working on the private, I was going to say, but a different government,
different decisions.
Be the government. So ultimately, what we would have is new parties coming through, and perhaps socialist parties coming through where there's opportunity.
But one thing, Greg, that I would say is where the Labour politicians cannot answer. What's the democratic route?
So, here's a question.
That's the problem they've got to answer. They cannot answer.
It's not even that, because like the two questions that did Labour dupe the Scottish electorate?
Well, with the vow.
With the vow. So on the one hand, right, and the second question for you is, in 2011 they had
the author of the vow became the chief executive of the SNP.
He did, but there is
actually, if you asked the author of the vow, he would say it was implemented. And then there's questions around where people's actual loyalties sit, and that's for another show. But in 2011, the SNP, get the majority that they need, and because they had that majority, that to even the Westminster parliamentarians, the Prime Minister Cameron at the time said that there's a mandate, right? What is different from them having a mandate from SNP and Greens having a mandate together, two independent parties? Why should it have been different in 2011 and the Section 30 order is granted, and why is it refused? That's way above my pay grade. I mean, the principle
of
that is principally what you're saying, right? If you have a majority of MSPs elected that support an independence referendum, as a Democrat, I would say you have it. But my if I was still sitting in the Parliament,
would that be your threshold though?
I would be saying, I would say two things, and this is where the discussions I go back to that we had with the likes of Jim Sillars, Alec Neil and them were really interesting, because one of the things I thought that we would have a real disagreement on was a referendum with another option in it. There was no disagreement in that.
No, there wasn't.
None whatsoever.
There wasn't.
They accepted that.
They wanted it.
I also said to them that I thought there should be a threshold as well, because and the reason a threshold is not I would swear this on anybody's life if you care to mention, but that we put a threshold in, because I don't think if you were the leader of a country that had just voted independence, you would want it to be a country that went 51-49. You'd want there to be a clear majority. That you say, we're not going to have this eternal, that wasn't a fair result, we need another one. So therefore, I'm not talking about a ridiculous, threshold. You're maybe talking about 60-40 or something like that. And I kind of think that it would be in everyone's interest if there was a very clear result. No scupper. I really have no interest in that. But I just think that would be a good start to a new constitutional.
So to go to your point in regards to that, at that time back then, it was an anomaly that occurred, remember, because you had Osborne and Cameron, they were quite buoyant in relation to just taking the election. Then in addition to that, you had Scots sitting within the Labour Party, where it would be Brown and Darling. Then you had Carmichael and that's it within the Lib Dems. So really in effect they thought, well,
it's sewed up.
Call it sewed up. The unionist perspective,
the disaster that well, a couple of things. They allowed Salmon to write the question and pick the date. Well,
the reason for that, I found this interesting. I seen an interview with Osborne when he was talking about this, is they didn't want that additional question of Dave O'Max because they knew they would have lost on that question of Dave O'Max. So and give him everything he wants, so he didn't ask the question.
I missed a good bit of detail in there. It's just some of this is, I've hardly spoken about it for a while, so it's coming back to me. I actually think if there's further in like Professor James Mitchell we did work with him. Jim Mitchell's a great guy, and he was formerly very involved with SNP, but he was looking at referendums across the world and how they operate, and I actually agree that any referendum, or I think it should be a two-stage referendum. The first thing you ask people is, do you want constitutional change? Yes or no? If people say no, it's dead. You didn't look at the second question. I think the majority of people would say yes. We go to the second question, and the second question then is, do you want full independence, or let's call it Devo Max for the purpose of this? And that way, everybody has their say. People who are no voters, they get their say. But if they don't, so the people who want change, we would all want change. We would break the threshold, I hope, and say yes. And then second, we all get our say on what the change looks like. I think that's a more democratic way of doing it.
See, given the fact, and you've recognised that yourself, with Labour getting into bed with the Tories in regards to the constitutional question, where do you think they would position themselves in an Indy 2? Do you think that Labour would have to try and separate itself in regards to that, or do you think that potentially we're looking at a reform sort of Labour coalition?
I'll tell you, there are some within there that are ultra-unionists. I mean, ultra-union. I hate the term unionism. I hate that term being applied to Labour. We're socialists. We shouldn't be. So there are people in there who are ultra-unionists. Absolutely.
Has that come about because of the binary nature of the referendum, or do you think they've always been that way?
Their hatred of the SNP
comes first. Shadows everything.
And by the way, it's the same for folk on the other side of the
day. No, I think
we've seen that. We've seen
there's some people, who in the Parliament would barely speak to you because you weren't, and you're like, this is absolutely
bizarre. The tribalism that's involved.
You can be friendly with people who you have. I like Neil Jackson Carlo, and I did a huge amount of work on women's mesh issues. The three of us were poles apart on issues, absolute poles apart. But on that issue, we came together and we worked as an effective team, and we got stuff done. And folk used to come in and see us sitting in the canteen and go, "What are they three up to?" And you think,
new party.
Do you think we've lost that? Do you think we've lost that commonality? And again, because it was coming down to that binary position and the tribalism that's involved.
It was tribal. It was stark. It was brutal. It kind of that dominated my first term in the Parliament, and so every debate was framed around the constitutional question, and it obscured a lot of crap decision making. I mean, things like the Offensive Behaviour at Football Act. Dreadful legislation being brought in, but because it was, this is what's got to go in, this is that you're on this side of the argument, or you're on that side of the argument. So everything was seen through the lens of the constitutional debate. When we came to the second period, at the start of the second period I was in, everything was framed around Brexit, because despite the SNP having a very significant constituency within the party that was pro-leave, which research since is
still there. Still there.
They seen themselves as tactically that we have to be a EU party.
Yeah.
And folk who hadn't mentioned the EU or wouldn't ken the EU if it whacked them in the arse were suddenly running about with badges with wee gold stars and everything was about pro-EU. And so that became the binary question in the second part until COVID hit.
It killed it, stone dead, actually.
It's a bizarre framework for me that, as I said again, if you look at it on the face of it, if we go to the left end of the Labour Party, it's really a cigarette paper that divides the SNP to Labour. There should be more that's uniting than well, that's what I was going to say, but it should be more that's uniting than dividing.
There should. And actually, I actually think that there's a real potential that there could be a potential for a Labour SNP coalition.
Coming next Holyrood election.
Depending on how things transpire.
Was it a fair fight, do you think, the NDRF?
I kind of think it was.
Because if you look at the institutional asset, and I'm not saying a conspiracy,
I had no.
We talked about the BBC.
But again, if you were never coming up against the establishment, and the establishment no using every available mechanism it had at its disposal. But really, in effect, when you look at the latter stages, there you had the Queen doing her wee statement, then you had Brow's speech in Maryhill, and then it was just a combination of things. I think that at the end,
I have to. It's no. I don't think I think whatever I say, you would get criticism for it. I think it was probably more. We can all pick up on things where you say that wasn't fair, that was right, that was wrong. I don't know. It's being caught up in it. I'm no impartial enough to kind of observe in terms of having been totally in the eye of the storm at the time. As I say, loved every minute of it, but it was interesting times.
We've literally got 2 minutes left with you. 2 minutes left with you. Neil, you need to come back on and talk to us. You definitely need to come back on and talk. So again, the other bit that I would say is you've highlighted a number of times that housing policy in Scotland needs radical reform. But what do you mean by that?
Well, we need to build council houses as for a start. No, I worked with councils, worked with housing associations and the rest of it. But we need, we must build council houses owned by councils, let by councils. When I was 16, put my name down for a council house. When at the time I was about 18, I think, 19. I got a housing association house. I was allowed to leave my name on the council list, and when my name came up, I got a council house. For someone in my circumstances now, I was working, I was single. It is inconceivable, not just that I would get a house, that I would get a point on a council waiting list, and that's no fair. I understand why people who have medical needs and all the rest of it should have an element of priority, absolutely. But we've got to a situation where young people at the moment have a choice. They either go with a private landlord who'll fleece them, or they go with a 40-year or lifetime mortgage that ties them into a situation of basically subservience to the banks for the rest of their days. That's wrong. That's fundamentally wrong. And the house builders, the power of the house building lobby has got out of control. We should be building council houses.
Tell me about that. Right, so I've done a fair wee bit of work. Actually, I managed to get on Radio Scotland to talk about this on the morning show. I can't remember who was hosting it, and I've spoken about it. I've spoken about it in council as well. Greg and I are both on the housing committee, and we scrutinise the new build programme. don't get me wrong, every new build property that comes online, I am delighted about. It worked in the same sector as you for many years, but when you look at the unit cost for flats in Motherwell, right, one project in particular, you're talking about each unit costing £295,000, where you can go onto the open market and buy the same size property, ex-local authority, for 85, 90 grand. Something is fundamentally wrong with it's procurement. The procurement processes are wrong.
And if there's a housing crisis, then surely the first way to address that crisis is by looking at what current stock is available.
It's not even that, Greg. Neil's talked about cartels. There's cartels that operate within the public sector, housing association sector as well. What is government going to do to drive down the cost in that and open it up to a wider market?
The Ferret investigative journalists and the Ferret have just exposed a big list of what councils have sold, assets have sold in the last couple of years. You can all look at that.
We'll get a look at that.
But so the volume of land it's got, and land that's sold to private developers, they're supposed to build houses, so many houses per
for affordable
acre,
housing,
and they never do it. They just give a contribution and all that kind of stuff. That's the power of the house building lobby. But interestingly, and this is not someone who I have any time for at all, but I think what he was talking about was interesting. Lord Hockey, Willie Hockey, I don't know if you've seen,
we've been paying close attention
to two billionaires tell me
exactly. That makes me sick. That programme watched it. However, the one thing that I did find interesting is that the house building project that they've just built in the Gorbals.
It's a curious one.
It really is interesting. Now the claim on that is that they're letting 3-bedroom really smart flats, and the rent is something like 500, 600 a month, and the yield that they want is 4%.
This is their mid-market
rent.
Now I've got a whole load of issues around it, but what he has said is the reason they can get the price down is that it's a system build that every house, I think there's only going to be 6 different house types, so you get the same construction company in, they know the houses back to front, the tradesmen know them back to front, and you have volume of a repeat, and that way you can drive the cost. Now, if that can be done as he claims it is, and I hope it can, why do we not have local authorities coming together and saying, we can afford X amount of houses this year, Shetland can afford that, Dumbarton can afford that, we'll come together into a consortium, we'll put our money together, and through volume purchase we will drive down costs.
I think we're at the end of the when the Larrick alliances were first started up, you could see the need for that mid-90s going into the early 90s. I think we have now got to the end of that process, and it's actually, or potentially, working against us, and we're not getting value for money. And I think you're right, we need to look at new ways of driving that cost down so that we can get more units for our buck than we currently do.
Well, Mr. Neil Findlay, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yes.
Anytime you wish to come on, and if you wish to come back for the Scottish Parliament elections for a critique,
absolutely,
you are more than welcome, considering you'll be on the sidelines, so it will be easier for you than running.
Perhaps he'll be on the sidelines.
I'm trying to edge that out there, Jerry.
No chance. He will not be back there, that's for sure.
We're going to stop for a couple of songs just now, and then when we come back, Jerry, we will be joined by our good pal Barry McCluskey.
Looking forward to it. If you
can give me a wee sec, just to try and get
this is a seamless transition, Neil, into the music segue.
Yes. Hello and welcome back to What's the Point? So Jerry, before we begin and before we introduce our next brilliant guest, I think we need to put out a wee disclaimer there and an apology. because there was a couple of wee expletives used when Mr. Findlay was here, so apologies to anybody listening at home. Constructive language is sometimes to be expected, but we'll never condone it. So our apologies. So moving on, Jerry, we're joined by a man who is an absolute inspiration in some cases. A legend. And
you're pushing it there, guys. You're pushing it.
And he's not too bad at golf.
He's not.
Can
I read out some of this man's accolades here?
Don't praise him too much here,
So,
by the way.
our guest tonight, Barry McCluskey. Now, honestly, wait, achievements in blind golf.
Go for it.
Ranked number 1 in Scotland, 3rd in the UK, 5th globally, winner of 12 tournaments since 2018, Blind Golf Open Champion in the US in 2019, Spanish Open Champion in 22-24, British Open Champion in 24, has represented Scotland 5 times and reached the world number 1 position.
But you didn't hang about with us, Barry.
In 2024. This guy transcends what it is to be a good golfer.
Aye.
And he's our buddy.
And he's our buddy. My goodness, mate, what a list of achievements.
Well, we get there.
I love it when he's bashful, Jerry.
It's just,
I've never seen him blush.
it's just that's what you play golf for, isn't it? That's what you take up sport.
So
you take up sport to be the best you possibly can be, and I've been lucky.
For many folk at home listening, Barry, we need to disclose as well, you are currently a sitting elected member in North Lanarkshire, and you are part of a group called Progressive Change, which you were a former SNP member, and you joined us when we created the new political party. One of the biggest things is for me is the level of achievement that you've had now. Again, you've had adversity in your life. I don't know if you're happy to talk a wee bit about that.
Yeah, no problem.
And again, I think that many people at home might not know the fact that you were diagnosed, and in fact, you know what, I'm probably better leaving it to you, Barry, in case I messed that up.
Yeah, so I was born at the for the day and minute I was born, I had atopic eczema, and at the age suffered right through school with long periods of, especially in the winter months, long periods of time off school and stuff like that, and my dad was a professional footballer. I tried to follow in his footsteps, played right through boys club level right up, and I was playing
a decent player, a decent footballer as well.
Barry,
a very good player.
I signed at 16 with Hamilton Accies, and and that's when I was playing in one game on a Wednesday night, and every time the ball went up into the sky, looking up, I couldn't see because of the floodlights. I just couldn't see the ball at all, and I thought maybe I just needed contact lenses or something, and went to the hospital, went to the opticians the next morning, and get blue lighted straight to lighted straight to the Gartnavel Hospital. They thought I had detached retina in the back of my left eye, and when they got me to the hospital, they discovered I had a disease called keratoconus, which is linked to my eczema. And at the age of 17, my football career was finished.
Good. And that was you were done. That was that completely.
So finished. I went through my first corneal transplant. I had to get a corneal transplant in my left eye. It's I just turned 18.
Yeah.
Corneal transplant in my left eye, and I couldn't play football again in case of any head knocks or elbows or anything like that, and run about that area, because it could have knocked the corneal transplant out.
Such a young age as well, Barry. That must have been difficult. That must have been.
I think at that age you're robust, aren't you? You just bounce back, and you don't really think about it too much until you get to a wee bit older.
Barry and I share a story, a football story. His ended when he was 18 through no fault of his own, sort of thing. He may well have gone on to have a glittering career. Mine's finished at 18 because I was rubbish. I got released when the day right it. Jim McLean just said, "Listen, son, you get home and tell your mother and father to start looking for a job," and that was it. But at least Barry's ended through no fault of his own, and that's.
So
how did you Barry? How did you bounce back for that?
Strong support for family and friends, and you just get people get round about you and make sure you're okay and look after you and nurse you back to life. And before I know it, I'm back at college. I'm doing health and fitness, and I do health and fitness for 2 years. Love it, fall in love with sport as a whole. Just because I had came from a sporting background, sporty family. My dad was a professional, my Uncle John was a professional. And it's just it's kind of robustness coming for it. You guys spoke about it with Neil earlier. Coming for the pits and the mining and the steel works and stuff like that. My papa was a steel worker, worked in the Ravenscraig all his days. So coming from that working class background where people just get round about you and they look after you and they nurse you back to life. And as I say, I went to college, done 2 years at college doing health and fitness, and then in my wisdom decided I was going to leave, and I got a job with South Lanarkshire Council at the time. I was a youth worker, just passing on, I worked through youth work, and then my world crashes in 2000. Just around about 2017, my world crashes when I wake up one morning and I can't see a thing.
And that's you blind?
Both eyes?
Both eyes, yeah.
Wow.
So what happened was I had the disease in my left eye and it hadn't developed into my right eye. Around about October 2017, I woke up one morning and just like, I can't see. I just cannot see. Spoke to my parents. My dad took me straight into the hospital. And by January 2018, I was registered blind.
It's an inspiring story you've got. Honestly, anybody at all, I think that if that was me, I don't know. I think it would be one of the hardest recoveries. And you take it for day and that devastating news, and potentially your sight's gone forever, and then you turn that into a positive. You then lead yourself into golf. Tell us a wee bit about how you ended up back into golf, Barry.
It's a bit strange, to be fair. So I'm playing golf socially with friends and stuff like that. I had a wee bit of, after when I turned 18. When I kind of my football career was out the window and stuff like that. I'm don't deny what my life's went. I kind of turned to alcohol for a long time, and I've been in recovery for 2010. So for the end to now, to 2018, I'm in recovery. I'm playing golf more, socially with friends. It's keeping me keep me in the straight and narrow, as they say. And it was one of the first things when the doctor told me he was going to register me blind in 2018. One of the questions was, can I still play golf? And
and not like you.
And his answer to me that day is mental, because he had basically just said to me, do you know about the Scottish Blind Golf Society? And I was like, wow, never heard about it. And from being registered blind that day, I left the hospital, and the doctor in the hospital, the specialist in the hospital, had actually contacted Blind Golf Scotland, and within 2 hours of me leaving the hospital, they'd phoned me and asked me to go along to one of their events.
It's amazing, isn't it?
What did you play off before you became registered?
Are you looking for tips?
I've played with him. He's already given me tips. He fixed my fade.
So it's quite funny actually, because playing socially and whatever with my friends, I didn't. I'm not saying I didn't take it serious. When you're playing with your mates, you want to beat them, but my handicap was probably about 18, 19.
Right, so you were a decent. You were a decent golfer.
You weren't too bad.
Yeah, and I play off 11 now.
That's good. So we fast forward. Then in 2022, you decide, you know what? I've had enough of this golf game. I'm going to get involved in politics and keep that running aside. What drew you into the world of politics?
A friend of mine was, the local MP in my area, and he, had said that the local council elections were coming up, and He'd seen what I'd done with the golf. He'd seen what I'd done, you know, like how I had to, my life had changed and how I had dealt with it and everything else that went with it. And he just mentioned to me, do you want to stand? Do you want to give it a go? And I was like, who, me? Surely not. And
were you political, Barry, before that, or?
I was politically aware, I would say.
Right. Okay.
I was politically aware.
You were a trade union member, I know.
Yeah, I was a trade union member. I was a trade union representative when I worked with Glasgow City Council. So I had the political awareness.
Right.
I wouldn't say I was political, you know, up to date with everything, but I was aware of, you know, political things that were happening, you know, with a referendum and stuff like that.
I think for a lot of people that was the big awakening.
Yeah, it was for me, definitely. And then when Stephen had spoke to me, and then I went and spoke to my family, and I'll never forget my dad just turned around to me and said, there's worse politicians out there than you. why not give it a go?
He's not wrong.
And from there, I decided I'm going to give it a go. And one of my main focuses when I was, running campaign and stuff like that was that, you know, I wanted to prove a point. I wanted to prove a point that no matter what happens in your life and no matter what your disability is, that, you know, you can still have a say in your local community and your local council and everything else that goes with it.
So we've got this timeline, and Jerry, in this timeline, Barry, I've always said that your stories are inspiration, because
Absolutely.
How many young people out there in North Lanarkshire right now, in South Lanarkshire, and perhaps even in Falkirk and wherever other these airwaves stretch to, how many people would be in a similar position, and if they receive devastating news as such that their sight is completely gone, etc., and perhaps think that there isn't any much hope after that, and then you can sit here tonight and tell that story. Look, listen, for this adversity then comes this accolade and these achievements, and this is what I've done, and I find myself in a luxurious position. I've been elected in North Lanarkshire. Surely, Barry, North Lanarkshire Council has wanted to put you up there as a figurehead and what it is and the achievements that you have done and the adversity that you've overcame. Surely somebody has said, Barry, we want to cover the fact that you're Scotland's #1 golfer for blind disabled golf. Surely somebody's done
the
that.
The beacon. Barry, the beacon.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely not.
No. Doesn't surprise me.
I would be very surprised if half North Lanarkshire Council know what I do.
Wow.
Outside
that is.
Do you know what? So one of the mantles of this show, right, has been about political education.
Yeah.
And now we're moving from the political side into the sporting side as well.
Yeah.
And so we're educating the people
of the Clyde One scoreboard when we come back after
absolutely.
the summer.
Well, at least those who are listening, those who watch online, those who pick this up on TikTok, they're going to know about Barry McCluskey after tonight.
Barry, your stories always amaze me. I'm only going to
so
lie.
Compelling,
I
absolutely
think
compelling.
It's absolutely there as an inspiration of people. My issue is again coming back to this administration that exists within North Lanarkshire. Why would you not want to herald that for the rooftops of the fact that you've actually got somebody who stood for council? Okay, politically we're on different spectrums, and that's absolutely acceptable.
Yeah.
But the reality of that is again, for a message and an inspiration to anybody else in similar circumstance and the authority, surely you would be herald him up on a pedestal to say, look,
I'd be taking him everywhere.
Look, this is, if it's a case that there is adversity or anything like that in your life under any medical challenge, look, this is what can be done.
He could be a convener with a job role.
Do you think so?
I think he could be a convener with a job role. Absolutely.
I hear environment and transportation and climate change is potentially coming up.
If it's no sport related, I'm not interested.
You're out.
Not like I have never, since the day and minute I've been elected, I have never been invited to, you know, the Lanarkshire, for instance, Trumpellier Golf Course, Lockview. Never been invited.
So you're a-
Palace, right? Yeah, you'll have been invited up to Palace.
Never been invited.
come
You're a
on.
Scottish champion. You're a Scottish
Former
champion.
world number one.
champion. And North Lanarkshire Council has no recognised that at any stage.
They've never invited me or asked me to,
Shame on them.
That's disgraceful.
Shame on them.
be, I don't know, take a photo outside the
So
golf course or whatever, on the driving range, whatever it may be.
So the political grouping that we represent, Barry, we are all about inclusivity, we're all about diversity, etc. And again, I think that just the fact that you're our pal first and foremost, but the second part of it is as well, you're part of that grouping. It clearly sends a message to anybody out there and within the communities, like, if this is something that you're interested in, then it's achievable. You can potentially achieve that.
Absolutely.
My thing has been within the council framework. How easy have you found that, being somebody that's clearly got a visual disability? How have you found the mechanisms of the council? How?
There is times in the chamber it has been difficult. Where officers put up slideshows or whatever within the chamber.
Like projection slides?
Projection
You get it
slides.
in advance
You
and
should
in a
get
different
that.
format, surely.
Absolutely not.
What?
Absolutely not.
So-
And I have brought it to the attention of them a couple of times, but
And you've been elected for how many years now?
since 2020.
So 3 years. Do you think? Right, okay.
Wow.
You're nearly 60% through your councillorship. Do you hold out hope that will change between now and 2027 when you go for
Absolutely
re-election?
Well, we know the missing leader will be listening to this radio show tonight, Barry, and I hope he is listening, because hopefully he can make the changes that's required
Indeed.
once we
Indeed.
get back and the new term starts, potentially in August.
Would like to put a motion through, but the chances of it
Getting
being
passed.
deemed as competent are
Are very slim.
very, very slim. Very,
Well,
very
let's
slim.
do that. Let's put that call out to any Labour councillor that's listening this evening. Why not go against your party whip and actually do the right and honourable thing? Because ultimately, if there's a motion going to come forward to recognise the sporting achievements of somebody in adversity, surely that should be something that we can all come together on and find consensus.
I would think
Surely.
so. I would think so.
The thing for me, Greg and Jerry, is like, and I've been asked this question a lot of times regarding my golfing achievements and everything else. I mean, and to me they do mean a lot, and to my family they mean a lot.
Definitely.
But the main reason that that I became a councillor, and the main reason I continue to play golf all over the world, is there's that bit in me where I love proving people wrong.
Yeah.
And I want to prove to people who have disabilities, no matter what your disability is.
You won't be defined by it.
No,
absolutely
of course not. And you, your disability, for instance, you typing up an email back to a constituent, Greg, it might take you 2 minutes, it might take me 3 minutes, but who cares?
Yeah.
I can still do it, but it might take me a wee bit longer. And that's the point for me, is that no matter the adversity that you face in your life, that you can recover from it, and you can get on with it. And the thing for me is that, and the reason why I do things like this, and the reason why, what would you call it, putting yourself in the shop window, right? The reason why I put myself in the shop window is there might be a kid 5-10 years time down the line who goes down the same route as what I've went, but is not as strong as what I am, and not be as robust as what I have been, and not have the family support that I have had. But they might see my story and it might change their life, and that's the reason why I do it.
Honestly, I think the council should be putting you out there, Barry, as a motivational speaker and having you talk to kids across the
All over the
entire
place.
authority.
All over the place.
There's no doubt about it. How many other people could be in a similar circumstance or position?
No.
And that's the bit about it. What do we want for our council? Do we want this bickering, continual political point scoring nonsense, rhetoric and drivel? Or do we want a council that's actually compassionate, caring, and wants to make sure that if anybody else finds themselves in circumstances or predicaments, support is always there? But here's the advice on how to get
Absolutely. Bouncing back by
Wow.
Barry McCluskey.
it. Well, gentlemen, we've done it again. We've overstepped our margin in relation to the phone calls and stuff like that. But
Two outstanding guests, Neil Findlay and the former world #1 blind golfer, Mr. and councillor Barry McCluskey.
He's still our #1, Jerry. He's still our #1. Right, anyway, listen, ladies and gentlemen, just to let you know that we'll be finishing up this evening for a wee break over the summer period. We will be returning again in mid-August or something
We'll
like
be
that.
round about the 19th
We'll be putting it out,
or thereabouts.
We'll put out our messages, but the show will be available on Thursday via the normal mechanisms, how you get your podcast, where it's in Apple, Podcasts, yes, now not Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, all the rest.
We're everywhere.
It is a shameless plug. I apologise in advance, but please, if you could go in and like the videos or even the TikTok pages, etc., because this is things that help the algorithm grow.
Share them, absolutely.
And the message can be spread in North Lanarkshire. But basically, I think that's us then, Jerry. Happy summer.
Happy summer,
Enjoy your
folks.
wee break, and
I will
and
indeed.
we'll see you in August.
See
Thanks
you
very
then.
much. What's the point?